Even shortly before the Ukraine invasion, conservatives in the United States argued that we shouldn't really care about Ukraine, that it was all Russia's business, and we should focus on domestic issues such as the gas prices, the inflation, and that sort of stuff. And to this very day, we're seeing this talking point that it is supposedly a leftist diversion to care about Ukraine, that it is silly activism. Now, it's a common thing that anything important, every important topic gets squeezed into this weird left versus right concept. So one position is supposedly left position, the other position is supposedly a right position. But you're dealing with not just one superpower, Russia, you're dealing with another one, China. And it is not clear for how many years Russia and China had been coordinating this. This might be a multi-level plan, and the attack against Ukraine is just the first stage of that plan. Did you know that China had built a new Silk Road, a new trade route, all the way to Europe, and this can be used for the transport of troops and equipment. So you may actually see Chinese soldiers at some point fighting in Ukraine. Sounds crazy, but this is basically what it is. I mean, you can tell by now that the conventional Russian forces are pretty weak. Not enough soldiers. The air force is pretty much a no-show. So Russia can't really do without China. They need that. And as I've explained in a previous video, Russia and China, they're so close. They may be one and the same thing. You're not supposed to know that, and not even internally, many people are supposed to understand that. But if you look back at the Chinese Revolution, you will find that all the important Chinese revolutionaries were trained by Russia, controlled by Russia. A large degree of intelligence control by Russia of these Chinese revolutionaries. So that would have been a smart move to create the impression that those two countries are separate. Now, when it came to Eastern Europe, countries such as Poland or Ukraine, everybody agrees that Russia took these countries over. And pretty much the same thing happened with China, yet when it came to China, everybody pretended there was a split between Russia and China. Not even KGB defectors who wrote books, not even they understood how close Russia and China truly were. So this is one major reason why you should care about the Ukraine war if you are a conservative in the United States or elsewhere. Pretty soon, China can launch another attack against Taiwan, and the North Koreans could launch an attack and keep America busy in the Pacific Ocean. The next reason you should care is that the Russian regime, as it exists today, is the KGB. Now, it's not hard to figure that out. The only thing we don't quite know is the exact command structure. So, which KGB people actually were above other KGB people? So, after the end of the Soviet Union, the Soviet phase of the Russian Empire, you saw some first-grade, high-ranking KGB guys moving into the background, and then you saw these third-rate, fourth-rate KGB guys, such as Vladimir Putin, getting recruited for a special operation, moving all that money outside of the country, moving into the city of London and other places, in order to transform Russia. So they were losing kind of that Marxist-Leninist claptrap, but it was still the same kind of regime. So you are dealing with the KGB. This is what you need to remember. Of course, Russia could afford a rebranding. They spent money on painting themselves as Christian conservative, and of course they're going to advertise this around the world. This is the same thing we've seen during the Cold War, when Russia advertised internationally and claimed to be the center of world socialism, even though it was just a very, very basic dictatorship. And all this Marxist-Leninist claptrap was just a facade, right? Socialism in practice is always just overtaxation and overregulation. And these two things you can find in any regime. Remember when President Obama joked about this whole topic? Remember when the Republican Mitt Romney warned about Russia as being the number one enemy or competitor in the world? And then Obama said this. Obama said, the 1980s have called. They want their foreign policy back. Cold War is over. The heck are you saying? So apparently the Cold War is not over. The next reason you should care as a conservative, Russia is really, really close to America. If you look at a map with the North Pole at the center, you will find how close the Alaska is to Russia. And they want Alaska back, by the way. They sold it a long time ago because they couldn't really colonize it because it was too difficult and too expensive and too cold. But now they want it back. And so this is another reason you should care. It's not just a faraway thing, right, over there in Europe, and who cares about Europe? It's right in front of you as an American. Next reason you should care is fairly obvious: the nuclear arsenal. And it gets kind of complicated, when you look at the studies from the East and the West. Of how a limited nuclear war, could be fought without damaging too much of the world. Now, Russia's arsenal is compromised to various degrees. The carrier systems require all kinds of parts and pieces and maintenance, and Russia can't really make these parts and pieces themselves. A lot of important pieces were made in Ukraine. A lot of maintenance was done in Ukraine. And since 2014, 2015, Ukraine has no longer provided those goods and services to Russia. So the carrier systems are compromised. And the Russian arsenal is aging. They do have some modern nukes, but don't get too impressed by these developments. The quality is usually pretty bad, what the Russians are making, and it's not really so much of an advantage to make bigger and bigger nukes, to put more and bigger warheads on one and the same rocket. Now, they've bragged about a missile that could annihilate Texas, or a large part of Texas. Now, that is doable. However, if you have one big rocket and that rocket gets stopped, you have a problem, right? So it's preferable to have many, many, many rockets with many different carrier systems ready. But just remember that it only takes a few minutes for Russian missiles to hit. So that's how close they are to America. The next reason you should care is the intelligence infiltration. Now, if you rack your brain, you will probably remember the Cold War era when the KGB had significantly infiltrated America. So they stole all kinds of information, secret ops. They stole the nuclear secrets using basic intelligence techniques, basic spycraft, and that sort of thing. So be aware, Russia is already here. Russia's assets, Russia's agents, they're already in your country, in America. They could be anywhere. It's their job to be everywhere. And these people are dangerous. And this is basically the KGB. So the Foreign Intelligence Service of Russia is now called the SVR, but it's the same as the KGB. And even the KGB had multiple names prior to that. The next reason you should care is the possibility of a triple superpower secret cartel. Now, I've mentioned before in this video that Russia and China may be the same thing. They may have been coordinating this for a long, long time. And if you have two superpowers secretly aligning, you may get a secret cartel of all three superpowers. Because let's face it, it doesn't really benefit them to truly fight each other, to truly destroy each other. Even attempting this would weaken them so much that they would lose their superpower status, and other competitors may then rise up. Other countries who want to play in the big league again, such as France or Japan or the Turks and whatever. So you might have a secret arrangement, and that would be a problem, because if you have a secret cartel with all three superpowers, they could stage proxy wars all day long and keep everybody scared and spend people's money on the military, on security. Get a bunch of people killed, get everybody really, really scared, and keep any competitor down. The next reason you should care as a conservative is an intelligence maneuver, which I have termed the full cross screw over. So that means you have two countries with a secret alliance at the very top. Nobody's supposed to know about this. And each country identifies its own dissidents, and these dissidents are then encouraged to get involved with the other country, especially the other country's intelligence services. And thereby, all these dissidents become criminals. So, for example, American dissidents, very unhappy people, they get in bed with Russian intelligence. And dissidents in Russia get into bed with American intelligence. And this is how you can criminalize all these dissidents and ultimately destroy them. Or maintain a certain level of paranoia and keep this going as a distraction. Another reason you should care as a conservative is that from the perspective of Russian intelligence, it is a main goal to break up the United States of America using any means necessary. So Russian intelligence may support separatist movements, such as in California or Texas. And at the same time, Russian intelligence may support radical Mexican groups, radical Latino groups who want the southern United States back. And this sort of game can be played anywhere in the United States. This is very, very common, to play people against each other and to destabilize the country, maybe even to the point of a civil war. So this is something you need to look out for. And the last reason why you should care about Ukraine as a conservative, the last reason is the reality of life in Russia today. So the marketing says it's a Christian wonderland. It's very conservative and very pro-family, and these people are very happy and very nationalist and all this stuff. Yet the reality is many people live in poverty in Russia, and even the middle class is very, very fragile. The demographics are a disaster. Few people want children at all. You have about 10% Muslims of a total population that is really, really small. It's just 140 something million people over there. And there's no rule of law, and there's no overarching ideology. So it's not like this enlightenment thing of people being represented in politics. And it's not communism anymore. It's not exactly a czarist empire, but it's very close. And the Russian marketing may play this card even more in the future, because the upper class, or the top of the upper class in Russia, they're already living like the czars in the old aristocracy. They live in these palaces and they have all this power. And you can't really criticize them, otherwise you get punished. And is this really what Western conservatives can accept? I mean, didn't George Washington fight a war for independence to disengage from the British colonial empire. And remember, the British throne was very, very close to the Russian throne. It's basically one family. It was the Schleswig-Holstein line, Hessen, and Denmark, this little country. It's one family. And so how can you be pro-America if you praise... how can you be pro-America if you at the same time praise the new Tsarism in Russia? I mean, this is as un-American as it gets. It's very predictable that Russia will play on Western conservatives' hopes and fears. Russia pretends to be the answer. Russia pretends to be the supporter, the savior, all of these things. And Russian propaganda is geared towards calming you down, taking away your fear, and giving you the impression that victory against the leftist world conspiracy, victory is very, very close, and you just have to do activism for Russia. As I've explained, Russia and China are very, very close, and we even see Russian propagandists such as the Alexander Dugin types. They are already talking conservatives in the West into accepting a Russian-Chinese alliance, which is pretty ridiculous. I mean, at some point they're going to just claim that China is kind of nationalist, and it's the ethnicity is very, very is very basic and very old school, and the Chinese culture goes back a couple of thousand years, and all these arguments. So anything and everything they will use as an argument to get you to go along. So, in closing, you should care about Russia, and you also should care about all these domestic issues, such as the gas prices and the inflation and all that. And you have to understand that these domestic issues and these international issues, they sort of overlap. They are always sort of combined. Let's not forget that a lot of manufacturing from the United States basically went to China at some point. Many things are not made anymore in the United States, or the prices are not really competitive. Even the Republicans are sort of split on the topic of Russia. Some of these Republicans are saying we shouldn't care about Ukraine, we should give Putin what he wants. And other Republicans, the more high-ranking ones, who are in these defense committees and hooked into the Pentagon, they are battling Russia any way they can. And there is sort of a catch to those, to this idea that we should accept the Ukraine war. Some of the thoughts behind this opinion are purely strategical. So at some point when China becomes the bigger problem, there may be a short-lived strategic alliance between NATO and Russia. This is one of many possibilities, and maybe somebody's trying to keep that possibility open, because in some ways Russia is more similar to us than China. Russia is based on the old Eastern Roman Empire, whereas Europe and America is kind of based on the Western Roman Empire. And so they're all Christian countries mainly, and so this might be just a strategic ploy for a future alliance, or even just short-lived alliance.